Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be talking about Whizbang the Wonderful, and that is a card that's been around for a little while. It actually came out in the Boomsday project, but if you don't know, this is a legendary minion and it contains 18 different deck recipes, so it's extremely unique and it gets updated every single expansion. So in today's video I'm just going to be talking about Whizbang, whether or not it's right for you to craft, because I know everyone's dust is really precious, and whether the new decks are any good as well. We'll be looking at the Saviors of Uldum deck recipes. But if we just start by looking at Whizbang itself, it is a legendary minion, so if you want it you have to pay 1600 dust to craft it. So it's expensive for a lot of people, but to be honest, when we look at the deck recipes later, it gives you access to 18 different decks and they're all full decks. So in that respect, I think it's quite good. Now Hearthstone contains a number of different players, people who plow loads of money in, people who play every single day, people who play once a week, once a month, people who have never paid any money. So it's difficult to say whether or not this would be right for you, but I would say if you're somebody that doesn't hit legend or doesn't want to hit legend, then this is a good option, because if you've only got a small collection, it's going to give you access to 18 decks. That is a lot of value just in 1600 dust. Now, if you're somebody who likes to craft one deck because you're free to play, but you play very seriously and you just grind that one deck until you get to legend, I don't think investing your time in Whizbang would be the best, because I think climbing past rank 5 with this would be very, very difficult. I think between 10 and 5 is also quite difficult, but anything up to rank 10 I think is great. And if you're somebody who just likes to come in and play and just have some fun in a few games and isn't too bothered about your rank, I think Whizbang is very good. And the reason it's quite hard to climb is that I said there's 18 decks. You do not get to pick which deck you play. So every time you hit start, it loads the game up and you randomly get one of those 18 decks. So some of them are better than others, and you never know which one you're going to get until you start playing. So in that respect, climbing can be quite difficult, but they are competitive decks. They're not top tier, but they're competitive, and we'll look at them later. But you get access to loads of cool legendaries, loads of cool mechanics, and all the fun's in there. So I would say if you're a new player who doesn't want to spend a lot on the game, I think this is a good place to start. And also if you're a free-to-play player and just want some variety, then I also think Whizbang is good. Another thing to note about Whizbang, which is important, is that he will be rotating into Wild when the next rotation happens in April next year. So in my opinion, if you were to craft him today, I think that's still long enough for you to get your value out of this one card. And when he goes into Wild, Blizzard has said, I believe, that they're going to be updating it with Wild deck recipes. So you won't be able to use him in Standard anymore, but you could play some Wild games, which could be fun. Now, I'd be surprised if Blizzard doesn't replace this kind of mechanic in the game. They already have kind of with Zale Shadowcloak, and I get a feeling we're going to get a new one when the single player mode comes out in the Saviors of Uldum expansion. That will be focused on the heroes rather than the villains. But Zale Shadowcloak doesn't update every single expansion. They are going to update it once after the rotation, because some cards will rotate out, but it's not the same way that Whizbang gets updated every single expansion. But anyway, that's enough about Whizbang. Now let's take a look at the deck recipes. Now, like I said, there's 18, so you get 2 recipes from each class. So that's pretty decent. So you get a lot of different decks that you can kind of experiment with. And as you'll see as we go through, you'll get access to so many good legendaries and fun legendaries as well. But in each and every case, each and every recipe, they're not the best version of that deck. There will be some downsides. And that's the trade-off, really. So the first one is Druid, and it's Untapped Potential. So you get access already to one of the best quests in the game right now, which is Untapped Potential. Now the expansion's only just started and people are figuring things out, but this one does seem very powerful. And it's a cool little card that you've got here, and you've got access to all the other ones. Worthy Expedition, Bees is in there, that's one of my favourite cards. Keeper Steladris is another legendary. Hidden Oasis, a new card. And they even got Cenarius in there, which is an important part of this deck. Forbiddeness Floop's in there, Loti. So they're not skimping on legendaries. So this is a good start. Ultimately, I don't think this is the best version of the deck, but it's not far off. So I think this is a good recipe to start with. Next is Nature's Restoration, and this one's a little bit less exciting, but it's still quite a cool deck to play, because it's a Druid archetype that you probably don't see a lot, and it's based on Lucenbark. And it's got a lot of the cards in there that you need to make a good Lucenbark deck. It's got the Gloop Sprayers, it's also got Hidden Oasis, which is the new one, Crystal Stags, Faceless Manipulator, all of these things that Forbiddenness Floops in there again, all of these cards that you need to then copy your Lucent Bark and restore health and just keep regenerating more Lucent Barks. So this is a fun deck, and again quite a good version of this deck, but this deck's not that great in my opinion. Moving on to Hunter, and there's two here, and actually I don't have a Master's Call in my... So yeah, even with my collection, Whizbangs can give you extra cards that you don't have. Anyway, so this one is Unseal the Vault, so again it's based off of the Hunter quest, which is nice. And even though I don't think that's the best quest right now, this gives you a good kind of version of that deck. It's got plenty of good cards. Halazi's in there as well, which is a legendary, but maybe not the best one. So this is basically just a mid-range Hunter deck with the twist of the quest. But for most free-to-play players, you probably played a lot of mid-range Hunter because it's usually quite cheap, but you probably wouldn't be able to afford the Vault. So it's quite nice that that's included in there. This next deck is probably the least exciting in the expansion because it actually doesn't contain any new cards. These are all old cards. Well, old cards, but from the previous expansions. None of them are from Saviors of Uldum, but it is a very strong deck. Mech Hunter was very strong in the previous expansion, and I think you could just play this deck as it is and still be very competitive in the game right now. Two Fireworks techs. It's got Snip Snap, and well, everyone's got Snip Snap to be fair, but Ursatron, Spider Bombs in there, Necromechanic, there's actually got 2 copies of that, Ziliax, Replicating Menace, the Whelps, Oblivitron's in there, and also Zul'jin. So it's a really nice way to be able to play that. It's not the best version of Mech Hunter, but it's not far off. I think it's a pretty good one. Moving on to Mage, and this is probably one of the most interesting decks you can play, and it's the Reno Mage, which is really quite good on the ladder. I've been playing a lot of it. This version's a little bit different to mine. There's a few cards in here I would take out, but ultimately you get Zephyrus, which is really, really fun card. I think it's one of the best cards they've printed in a long time, and it's really powerful too, so that's great you have access to it. Of course you get Reno Jackson, wherever he is. Yep, you get the Reno Jackson, which is really good. Calicos is in the deck, Simiat. So there really aren't skimping on the cards that you can have in here. This one's gone for a little bit of a different route, which I don't think is particularly the best for this type of Mage deck. And they're going with Barista Lynchen, so you play all the battle cries and then you try and get them back. So you can try and get your Calicos back, you can try and get your Hex Lord Malakras back, and also your Mossy Horror in there, for example. So, oh, and also Luna's Pocket Galaxies in the deck, I should say. So this really has everything apart from Conjurer's Calling, which is a shame because Conjurer's Calling is so good. But they're trying to make it different. I don't think they want to make the top tier decks. Next up is the Archmages of Dalaran, and this one's okay. It's not especially interesting. It's basically just Cyclone Mage, but that was really popular in the previous expansion. But again, it doesn't have Conjurer's Calling in this deck or the Mountain Giants, which really did set that deck apart. What this deck here that they've made is trying to do is you play loads of cheap spells. So you put your Sorcerer's Apprentice down, you play all your cheap spells, then you play your Elemental Evocation, and you play your Mana Cyclone to get all those spells back. And hopefully you had Archmage Antonidas on the board to generate loads of fireballs as well, to kill your opponent that way. This one is, when it goes off, will be really good, but I think this is a less consistent version of that deck. Moving on to Paladin, and we've got Perfect Justice. This is another singleton deck, so you do have Sir Finley in there, another cool legendary, and Zephyrus. So this deck's probably a little bit weak, to be honest, but it's got loads of cool cards. It's a singleton deck, it's going to be fun to play. Tyrion, Shivala, Simiat's all in there. Basically the idea is you're trying to it's just like a mid-range paladin basically. You're just putting cards on the board and then playing a few spells to reduce your sheer valor. Glowstone Technician's in the deck, but because it's a singleton deck you only get one, so that makes it less consistent. So I don't really see this deck being very strong, but again, access to loads of cool legendaries. The next one is Sunreaver's Secrets, and this is basically Secret Paladin, which, to be honest, I think is quite weak. Secret Paladin has a very good start, but it seems to just run out of steam. So you can play the Mysterious Blade, your Secrets, and also the Sunreaver Spy with Commander Risa. All that's really strong in the early game, but it's really difficult to push yourself over the end when you're trying to kill your opponent. But this deck does have a few ways out. It does have Leroy Jenkins in there. Subject 9 helps to draw the secrets. And they put a Pharaoh's Blessing in there, I think, just to try and give you that extra damage to finish. even though I don't think that card's very great, but a cool deck nonetheless. Then moving on to Rogue, this deck's really cool. This is Bizarre Burglary, so you do get access to the Rogue quest, very nice. And then basically it's just a Thief Rogue, which is a really fun deck, one of my personal favourite decks to play. It's just always fun because there's always crazy things that happen. So you do get Clever Disguise, Questing Explorer helps you draw. Not really a good card to put in that deck, I don't think, but anyway. Blink Fox, you also get Hench Clan Burglar, Spirit of the Shark, Vendetta, all the things that you need. And then you finish it off, you get Test Greymane to replay all those cards. So this is a fun one, and actually pretty decent. Next up we have Curse Crew, which isn't really that interesting. It's just Pirate Rogue, and unfortunately it only has one new card, which is Hooked Scimitar, but it's still a good deck. It's basically just Pirate Rogue, tempo Pirate Rogue, put your cards on the board and kill your opponent. And it does have Edwin Van Cleef in there, and also Captain Hooktusk, Captain Greenskin, so there's some good cards in here, and we know that Pirate Rogue is always going to be strong. So you'll get some wins with this, but only one new card, which is a bit disappointing. Moving on to Priest, and this is Activate the Obelisk. Unfortunately, I don't have this quest yet, but this does give you access to the quest, and you get all of these other cool cards. High Priest Amit, Ziliax is in there. Basically, it's a Zoo Priest, so you try and heal enough, complete your quest, and then keep buffing your minions. Holy Ripple's a new card. There's loads of new cards in here which kind of synergize with it, and I think it would be a good fun one to play. Next we have Day of the Dead Priest, which is basically just Resurrect Priest. It's a good deck. This isn't the best version of it, like none of them are the best versions of it, but this one's got some cool things in there. It's got Archmage Vargoth, which is really important for this kind of deck. It's got Katrina Muerte, which I don't have myself. Plague of Death's one of the new ones, Mass Resurrection. It's got everything you need to resurrect these big minions. And, you know, Res Priest has always been the same. If you manage to hit the right minions and you get the cards in your hand at the right time, it's very hard to beat this kind of deck. But if you don't draw the cards, it's always frustrating. Still, a cool deck, and another load of packed with good legendaries. Next on to Shaman, and we've got Corrupt the Waters, so this one gives you access to the Shaman quest, a very powerful quest which can double your battle cries. It's got all the stuff that you'd expect to be in here. Mind Control Tech, Life Drinker, Barista Luncheons in there to bounce your minions back, Simiat, Swamp Queen Hagatha, Shadowwalk, Geppetto. It's got everything in there. Ultimately, this isn't going to be the strongest list. It does have focus on lackeys. Does it have the... No, for some reason it doesn't have the totem which generates lackeys, which is really not good. It needs that for this deck. But you can still get them from the Evil Cable Rat and your Sludge Slurper. So it's a good deck. Then of course we've got Murloc Shaman. This isn't very exciting, but it's Murlocs, and Murlocs are always good if you can draw well. So this has got all the Murlocs you'll need in there. Next we probably have my personal favourite on the list, which is Supreme Archaeology for Warlock. It's the Quest Warlock. You play the quest, you draw a bunch of cards, then you play Refarm, and then you can tap for free legendaries. That's the idea of the deck. I think this one is not the list that I would play, because the strongest part of this deck is probably playing Dollmaster Dorian and Plot Twist on the same turn, because then you summon a bunch of 1/1s, and the idea being is you have strong Death Rattles, which can then just be a strong play. Unfortunately, they don't really put the Death Rattles in here, like Mechanical Whelp should be in here, I think. But they do have cards to Defender to give you some healing, and also Rotten Apple Bomb to give you some more healing. So those are the Death Rattles kind of there, but there's a few cards missing from this deck which I would expect to be in there, but it's still a lot of fun to play. Next, moving on to Warrior, and we've got Hack the System, which is the quest for Warrior. It's got a lot of good cards in here. Soul Thraze is what you're really going to be doing to complete the quest, using Soul Thraze. Also Liveway Alliance to get you some lackeys. Weapons Project is also a weapon, and then once you've completed the quest, you can start summoning 4/3s with your hero power. So it's a pretty cool deck. It's got all the cards in here that you would expect in this kind of deck. Is it strong enough? I don't know how good this is in the meta at the moment right now, but again, another cool deck for you to try. And finally, we have Drop in the Boom, which is the final Warrior deck, and this one's pretty cool. I don't think it's very good, but it's fun. And basically, it's about having huge minions. You get Colossus of the Moon, Boom Reaver, and Undasta, and you play the Boom Ship, summon them out of your hand, and try and kill your opponent. It's also got cool synergies with Undasta then when doing Overkill and summoning the Warbear and also the Grizzly. So there's Dr. Boom in here as well. Achille the Rhino, he's a beast. He gets summoned from Undasta as well. And also, if you Overkill, you can give Undasta +5/+5, which is nice. So there's loads of cool synergies in here. I think it's a little bit too top heavy, so sometimes you can just draw these cards and they're useless. I also don't think Dimensional Ripper is very good. Yes, it is. If you played this and summoned 2 Colossus of the Moon, that's amazing. If you summoned it and played it and summoned 2 Boom Reavers, that's also very good. Well, I suppose there's some good targets. Indasta, the War Bear, Grizzly, you'd be quite happy with as well. Ziliax. But it's too expensive for my taste, but it's very fun to play. Okay guys, so that's all of the decks. So as you can see, you get access to loads of cool legendaries, and if you're a free-to-play player, saving up the amount of dust to craft just one of those decks is difficult, but having access to all of them is really cool. So my recommendation remains the same. Even though this will rotate out of standard in April next year, I still think it's worth it. If you were to get it today or during this expansion, you'll still have plenty of time to play with those decks. If you're the sort of person who likes to come in, play a few games of Hearthstone, and then check out, Whizbang's awesome because you play a wide variety of decks. You don't have the highest chance of winning. If you want the highest chance of winning, craft the best. Go online, look for the best deck, save the dust, and craft that. But you are repeating that same deck over and over. That's why I think Whizbang's great for new players, because it can teach you the mechanics and just give you some variety, which is nice and fun. So yeah, if you're not too fussed about climbing and you usually play on the lower end of the ladder, this is great for you. So yeah, I do like Whizbang, but it's entirely up to you. Some people this one isn't right for. Some people I think it absolutely is right for. You just have to make that decision for yourself. Ultimately, 1600 dust, I think it's worth taking the risk if you're on the fence, because you know that's 1 legendary. A lot of decks take way more than 1 legendary to make, so you're just taking the risk on that 1 legendary to get a bunch of cool decks that you can play with. Even if you can't pick which one you're going to play, don't forget they're always random when you play them. But anyway, I hope this helped you guys decide on whether you want Whizbang. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.